If you watched my last video I posted, it was us buying this van. If you haven't, go check it out. Anyways, I started to do a project. I started to replace a timing chain, and I got about 10 or 15 minutes into it, and I stopped and said, well, somebody out there may not know how to do this. So this would have came with a nylon can gear, a plastic one in other words, and they're known to shear off, break, and that'll leave you sitting along the road. I'm just going to take you through the steps. I already got started, so I'm going to backtrack real quick, show you what I did. So what I did first is got the radiator draining, and while that was draining, I loosened up my fan shroud here, and only 4 bolts held that on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Loosened that up and I slid it over the fan. 2 bolts held on my overflow container. 4 bolts held my fan on, and the pulley. And of course, removing the radiator just requires removing both tranny lines, if you have tranny lines that go to your radiator, which most automatics do, and of course your lower and upper radiator. Start by disconnecting the battery. I did take off my belts. That's another thing I'm going to do while I'm in here. I'm going to put new Gates belts on, power steering and alternator. Got the bottom pulleys off. 6 1/2-inch size socket bolts held it onto the harmonic balancer. Here they are down here. I'm going to check to see if there's pressure in the system. If there is not pressure in the system, I'm just going to disconnect the hoses, and I'm going to remove it for the rest of this year. It means we're already into August. We really won't need it September, October. To remove this, all I really did was just the brackets as part of the water pump housing bolts. Then it had this bracket that went to the intake, and we had another bracket right here that had a 5/8 bolt that went to the side of the air condition. So that's all I'm going to do, and I'm going to get that out of my way so I can see the engine much more clearly. As you can see, it's a lot more open now without the air condition compressor in there. You can see everything real plain. I removed the power steering pump, just laid it over there on the steering arm, and virtually all that it is this right here, this bushing here, and this bolt goes right down here between this and this slot down here for your adjuster would be this water pump bolt right here. To finish taking this bracket off, 1 more water pump bolt and 2 bolts back here, 9/16 bolts, and they're part of the timing chain cover that we got to remove anyways. Also, I removed the bypass hose that goes from here to here, and I got my alternator brackets. They just basically slung down like this and hooked up to there. Got them all out of the way. I may end up removing the alternator completely and I got to take my fuel pump off. Also, at this point, my water pump was set to come off just like that because all the bolts were out of it. Now, this water pump has been replaced because it's not painted. At some point in time, so I'm going to put a different one on there. I might just throw a brand new one on just for peace of mind. Actually, everything I'm doing is for peace of mind. I turned the engine over in the way it would run until I could get the screwdriver underneath the oil pan right here, all the way under the tip of it sticking out. And then I just took this ratchet. It's a 1 1/4 socket, and usually they break right loose. I haven't really had no problems getting them to break loose. Here it is. Take note. See the distance between this and the water pump? When you go to put this back together, that needs to be about the same. It's not very much of a thickness there. It goes almost up against your timing cover here. To pull off that, you're going to need a harmonic balancer puller. Be careful if you're doing this that this right here is smaller than the threads of the bolt that you took out. You don't want to damage the threads for that on your crank. That would be a bad thing. Screw this in until it bottoms out on the crank, right there. Take my ratchet, and you should start to see that just come right off of there. There's your harmonic balancer. Now all that's really left is fuel pump and bolts here. Also, I'll have to get underneath the bottom of your oil pan, right up here, you have a bolt on each side that goes up into your timing chain cover. You have to remove those too. I went ahead and removed my alternator. I just paid attention to which color was where, and this one here is obvious. That's the hot from the battery. So there was really nothing. I already had most of that loose. It basically hooks up just the one right through the head, into the head, and the other ones are just run the water pump. I disconnected this line here, so I just got to remove this rubber hose, and this is one more bolt here. I removed this bolt in the fill pump, one more back there, and it's ready to come off. So as you can see, take this out. Make sure you try to catch as much as you can. You can reuse it. I have over here that I've saved. That's 1 gallon from the van, another gallon from the van, and this will be another gallon from the van. I got the 2 bolts out from underneath down here that go up through the bottom and into your timing cover through your oil pan. Them are the last ones I take out. They'll be the first ones I put in. Okay, so we get to see right now if my peace of mind was warranted. You guys get to see it with me. And the verdict is it's had a new timing chain put in it, because this would be plastic and nylon right through here. But put this in here, try to catch all the grime that falls, and then you got your timing marks. There's a dot. See if I can get right in there on that. Right there. It's a dot, and you'll have one down here. I'll line those dots up, pull it off, slip the new one on. So you could put your harmonic balancer on there and try to turn it till the dots are lined up, but this is pretty convenient. I just hooked up the negative, and I'll just jump over here, just right over here, turn it over just a hair like this, and get it to them dots lined up. I got it lined up. This dot right there is lined up with that dot right there. I don't know how well you can see that in the camera. I got the tension on this side tight, like it would be if it was running, and this side over here is loose. That'll always be the loose side, but obviously this is loosened up quite a bit since it was installed. I re-disconnected the battery, and now I'm taking this off with a 5/8 ratchet. I had already broken it loose. And this here, I have to see how much wear it's actually showing, but these are, if you don't know, these are eccentric. It goes like this with your fill pump arm, and that's what works your diaphragm and your fill pump, and that's how a mechanical fill pump works. Now to get these off, they just pretty much got to come off evenly, and I'll just pull them. I'll have to put the camera down and pull from back here and just work both of them off evenly. And just one more time so you can see, there's a dot and there's a dot. I just took my time and did a little bit of cleaning on it. It helps the heat escape if you don't have all that gunk all the way around the motor. And not only that, but I like a clean motor. Just remember, when you're doing that cleaning, make sure you got a rag there so all that junk doesn't fall in your oil pan. All I really used is a scraper, a couple places a razor blade, screwdriver, and a wire wheel on a drill. I tried getting rough with these a little bit. They seem really solid and in there, so I think I'll just leave those alone. Here's my timing set I bought, in case you're wondering. There's the part number. It's a double roller timing chain, much higher quality than what it would have came with from the factory. So this is standard, and this here would be the mark I'll use for that. Does that make sense? I hope. Okay. A lot of people do things to prep a chain before they install it. For me, I'm just going to let it soak in thin motor oil. That's what's going to oil it anyways for the life of the chain, is the engine oil. So that ought to do it. You can see dot and dot. I'm going straight up. So I put it on there. Obviously you got to slide the crank sprocket on first. Get it started on here. And you just slide them evenly together with two hands till this starts and gets on the keyway. And this right here, I put a socket a little bigger than that. I just barely touched it and it went in. But you got to do them evenly because that chain won't bow out. And if you notice the slack's on this side now instead of this side, that's because putting it together, there was probably on the other chain maybe 1 degree lost in timing with the slack that was in it. So when it tightened up, it just naturally pulled it tight on this side instead of this side, because the cam would have went forward, tightening up this side and loosening this side. So maybe it lost a half a degree or a degree. So anyways, and this has a keyway hole in it. You can see it. The keyway hole goes obviously right over the key like that. Then you put your bolt in there and torque it down. When I put the a fuel pump eccentric on here, I always put engine assembly lube on that. Another thing is if you notice on this pan gasket, end gasket, there's a large end and a small end. And if you look at the pan, you have a large hole and on this side a small hole. So just so you know, it's directional. I know you've seen me use this before in my videos, but this Max Oil Resistant by Permatex, the Ultra Black, is what I like when I'm sealing up oil things. And on this, I just run a nice bead all the way on the inside, and then right here you can see how I built up like a little levee right there. And then I'll just put it on and pull them ends through with a pair of pliers. So that's all pulled through. It snaps in, and you can just feel it when you pull those through and they snap in. Make sure that flap is on each side of the oil pan, not folded up in there. You can see how that is. Then I'm going to put another bead of RTV right through here for when my timing cover goes down on it. I'm very careful. You don't want to get the RTV inside the oil pan. It's the worst stuff that could happen if it got inside your oil pump. So it won't. It'll be just totally fine. Just don't have over access. Your cork and gaskets they give you in the timing cover come oversized. That won't fit. You just got to cut them to size, just like I did right there. Once you get them cut like that, then I just put RTV on both sides of them, set them in there. Make sure you got a bead in the corners. For the timing chain cover seal, all I do is take a screwdriver and I bend it in on 4 corners so it loosens it up, because it's just a press fit. And then I turn the timing chain cover over, and you just take a screwdriver and I just put it right inside here, and I just barely tapped it and it fell right out. So I clean this up, and then this one here will go in this way. It'll just fit right inside there like that. I don't know that it matters, but I'll probably put just a little Indian head shellac on here. I've used both for the timing chain cover gasket, Indian head shellac, and I've also used RTV that I'm using already. That seal in. Just use a large screwdriver or something dull like that. Don't get on this seal, get on this lip. Slightly tap around it as you go, and it'll drive it right in there. And then you turn around this way and make sure that's flush all the way around. Some actually tap in from the front. Different years, different models. Water pump I bought is a lifetime warranty from Napa. Anything that screws into the aluminum or got water going through it, I like to use anti-seize. So I shot the front of the engine with primer, and then I shot a coat of paint over it. And the only reason why I did it is to keep it clean, like I said, and also it helps me find a leak if there's a leak. And the whole process of putting it back together is just the reverse steps of what we did to get it apart. Just remember, when you put that timing chain cover on, those bolts start with the bolts underneath that go through the oil pan, and sometimes it even helps to go get a bolt that's a 1/4 of an inch longer to help get it started and to pull it down. And then after you get the other bolts started, you can back them out and put the original ones in. It's kind of a pain if you don't have somebody to help you want to push down on the top, because that rubber end gasket, or seal I should say, is not very compliant when it comes to compressing down.